I've auditioned for a lot and haven't got a lot. And then Gran Torino came around where he was talking to me. It was just like this little role.
Imagine Scott Eastwood has lived a life most people could never imagine growing up in the shadow of one of Hollywood's biggest legends, yet often feeling invisible. While Clint Eastwood was winning Academy Awards and shaping Hollywood history, Scott was auditioning for his father's movies and being rejected every single time. Even when Clint directed American Sniper, Scott didn't get the call. Instead, he parked cars, poured drinks behind a bar, and worked construction just to make ends meet. By the time he turned 35, the grind had burned him so badly that he even considered walking away from acting altogether and becoming a firefighter. But the most surprising part of his story isn't just the struggle, it's what happened when he finally stood up to his father. Scott Clinton Reeves was born on March 21, 1986, in Monterey, California. His arrival wasn't met with headlines, and it wasn't even acknowledged by Clint Eastwood himself. At the time, Clint was already a Hollywood powerhouse, directing and starring in films like Pale Rider, while living in the public eye with actress Sandra Locke, but away from the red carpets. Clint was carrying on a secret affair with Jocelyn Reeves, a flight attendant. From that affair came Scott and later his sister, Catherine. Their existence remained hidden for years, tucked away in the shadows of Clint's carefully controlled public life. Scott's birth certificate didn't even carry the Eastwood name. He was listed as Scott Reeves, another quiet attempt to keep the truth buried. Scott spent his early years in Carmel by the Sea, the same town where Clint had once been mayor. But unlike the Hollywood lifestyle his father was living, Scott's world was modest. While Clint was commanding $15 million per film, Scott's mother was supporting him on a flight attendant's salary. When he was 10, Jocelyn moved Scott and Catherine to Hawaii, putting thousands of miles between them and the Eastwood spotlight. There, Scott blended into ordinary life. His classmates never knew he was Clint Eastwood's son. His father was mostly absent, building wealth and prestige while Scott earned his allowance by waiting tables, working construction jobs, and later paying his own way through college at Loyola Marymount University. Even as he studied communications and took acting classes, he refused to lean on Clint's name. He auditioned under Scott Reeves, determined to make it on his own, but Hollywood wasn't kind. Scott later admitted he auditioned for nearly every one of his father's movies and was turned down every time. Clint's philosophy was simple: no handouts, no favors, you earn it yourself. Admirable, perhaps, but for Scott it meant endless rejection. He took whatever roles he could find, tiny parts in indie films, straight-to-video projects, and eventually a blink-and-you'll-miss-it role in his father's Flags of Our Fathers. No one even knew Clint Eastwood's son was on screen. While Clint collected Oscars, Scott was serving drinks to tourists and making more money bartending than he did acting. Family life was just as complicated. Clint had 8 children with 6 different women, and Scott was only one piece of that puzzle. Some siblings grew up in wealth and privilege. Others, like Scott and Catherine, did not. Many didn't even meet until adulthood. Resentment simmered under the surface, and Scott often felt like an outsider. In Hawaii, he struggled with anger, was suspended for fighting, and carried a frustration he couldn't explain. He knew who his father was, but he couldn't talk about it. By high school, when his family returned to California, whispers about his famous last name began to follow him. Some kids idolized him, others mocked him. For years, he considered keeping the name Reeves forever, just to escape the shadow of his father. By 2009, things began to shift. Scott landed a role in Invictus, directed by Clint, but this time, he finally used his real last name, Eastwood. Slowly, he began carving out his place in the industry. He took risks signing onto projects like Texas Chainsaw 3D, even though it could have typecast him. In 2014, he appeared in Fury alongside Brad Pitt, Shia LaBeouf, and Jon Bernthal. The grueling World War II film required real tank training and physical endurance, and for the first time, Critics started calling him a serious actor. A year later, he surprised everyone again with The Longest Ride, a Nicholas Sparks romance where he even did his own bull riding stunts. That same year, he starred opposite Taylor Swift in her Wildest Dreams music video, igniting both buzz and backlash industry. Insiders warned him it would hurt his credibility, but Scott went for it anyway. The video exploded, gaining millions of views within hours, but while his career was finally gaining momentum, his personal life was shattered. In 2014, Scott's girlfriend, Jewel Brangman, died in a car accident at just 26 years old. The crash itself was minor, but the airbag inside her rental car was defective. When it deployed, it exploded, sending shrapnel into her neck. Jewel was killed instantly. The airbag came from Takata, later part of the largest automotive recall in U.S. history. For Scott, it was devastating. He carried the grief and the guilt in silence, not even reaching out to her father for years. When he finally spoke publicly about it in 2017, it was clear he was still broken, that tragedy changed him. He admitted it made dating harder, made trusting people harder, and left him with wounds that may never fully heal. One of the people who helped him cope, even unknowingly, was Paul Walker. The Fast and Furious star had been a mentor and a friend, introducing Scott to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the late 2000s. Paul saw it as more than just training. It was a philosophy, a way to stay humble and balanced. After Paul's death in 2013, Scott clung to that discipline. Jiu-Jitsu became his therapy, giving him structure and a way to manage grief and anger. "No one is special on the mat," Scott said. "You'll choke some people out, and some people will choke you out." It was exactly the grounding he needed in an industry built on ego and illusion. By 2017, Scott stepped into Paul's world directly when he joined the Fast and the Furious franchise as Little Nobody, a sharp-suited government agent. The role was designed to fill some of the void Paul had left behind, but Scott made it his own. From there, his career accelerated. He starred in Pacific Rim Uprising in 2018, then earned critical praise in The Outpost, a raw and emotional war drama that veterans praised for its realism. By 2023, he was back in Fast X, sharing the screen with Vin Diesel, Jason Momoa, and Brie Larson, proving he belonged in the biggest franchises on Earth. At the same time, Scott was building a life outside Hollywood. In 2019, he co-founded Made Here, a clothing brand dedicated to American manufacturing. For Scott, it wasn't about fashion trends, it was about pride, about proving that quality goods could still be made in the United States by hardworking hands. It was risky, but it was real, and it gave him a purpose beyond the screen. Yet his relationship with Clint has always loomed large. Their most intense moment came when Scott was just 16. He had made the mistake of leaving his 14-year-old sister alone at a party. When Clint found out, he didn't give a lecture. He slammed Scott against the wall and punched him in the face. Then he said only one thing: "You don't ever leave your sister at a party, ever." It was tough love, the kind of parenting Clint believed in. Scott later admitted that's how he was raised: no handouts, no excuses. If you wanted something, you earned it. Even in his career choices, Clint offered guidance without interference. When Warner Brothers offered Scott a 3-picture deal that included Suicide Squad, Clint didn't pressure him. He simply said, "If it feels right, do it. If not, don't." Scott turned it down, trusting his gut. It was a decision that showed he wasn't just living in his father's shadow, he was building his own identity. Today, Scott is balancing action blockbusters with deeply emotional roles. He's set to star in Regretting You, based on Colleen Hoover's best-selling novel, alongside Allison Williams, Dave Franco, and McKenna Grace. He's also filming Stolen Girl, based on a harrowing true story, and Lucky Strike, a World War II drama. He's even part of Wind River, the next chapter, diving into dark and layered storytelling that goes far beyond Hollywood spectacle. Each project pushes him further from the label of Clint Eastwood's son and closer to his own legacy. But behind the roles, the business ventures, and the public appearances, Scott remains deeply reflective. He once admitted that Hollywood often felt like a circus, one that burned him again and again. There were times he nearly walked away, times when firefighting seemed more stable, more honest. Even now, he worries about what kind of father he would be if he had kids of his own, whether the instability of the industry would pull him away the way it pulled Clint from him. For Scott, acting has never just been about fame. It's been about survival, identity, and proving to himself and to the world that he's more than a name. Scott Eastwood's story isn't just about chasing Hollywood dreams. It's about carrying the weight of a complicated legacy, finding resilience through heartbreak, and building a life that's truly his own. From bartending to blockbuster films, from grief to growth, from rejection to respect, Scott has carved a path that reflects not just his father's lessons but his own. Unshakable will to stand tall in a world that never handed him anything.